They thought they were saving a helpless stray. A skinny, silent, strange-looking dog wandering near the coastline, alone, trembling, and staring at them with eyes that didn't blink. The family felt sorry for him. The kids begged to bring him home. So they did. But they had no idea what they had just brought into their house. On the first night, the dog didn't eat. He didn't bark. He didn't even sleep. Just stood completely still in the hallway, watching every room like he was guarding something, or waiting for something. By the second day, strange things began to happen. Scratches appeared on the door, the lights flickered whenever he walked by, and the family's youngest child began waking up, screaming, claiming the dog was whispering to her at night. Still, the parents thought maybe he was just traumatized, until the vet took one look at him, froze, and silently stepped into the back office to call the police. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The sun hung low over the coastline as the Ramirez family wrapped up their weekend picnic. Waves rolled gently across the sand, the sky glowing in soft shades of orange and pink. The children, Mia and Lucas, were gathering seashells when Mia suddenly froze. "Dad, look!" Mark glanced up, expecting to see a crab or a bird, but what stood at the edge of the dunes made him slowly rise to his feet. A dog, if it was a dog, was watching them. Its skin was dark and hairless, stretched tight over a lean, muscular frame. Long, pointed ears stood erect, and its golden eyes didn't blink. Not once. It just stared, as if studying every member of the family with eerie calm. Lucas took a hesitant step forward. Is he lost? The animal didn't move, didn't growl, didn't even twitch. It looked tired, almost defeated. Mia's voice softened. "He looks hungry." Mark frowned. There was something unsettling about the creature, but there was also something else, an unmistakable sadness in the way it lowered its head slightly, as if expecting to be chased away. Emily, the mother, approached slowly and crouched down. "Hey there, sweetheart. Are you okay?" The strange dog lifted its gaze, locking eyes with her with surprising depth. Not aggressive, not frightened, just aware. Emily extended her hand, palm open. The dog watched her for a moment before stepping forward, carefully, almost respectfully, and gently sniffing her fingers. Mia gasped. "Mom, he likes you!" Mark knelt, noticing the creature's ribs showing through its skin. "He's starving," he murmured. "Probably abandoned." Emily glanced at him with concern. "We can't leave him here." Mark hesitated. Something about those unblinking eyes made his skin prickle. But when the dog slowly leaned against Mia's legs, as if pleading for safety, he sighed. "Okay," he said softly. "He's coming with us." The dog didn't bark, didn't jump, didn't wag its tail. It simply followed them to the car, silent, shadow-like, and strangely graceful. None of them realized it yet. But bringing him home would change their lives forever. The drive home felt strangely quiet. The dog lay on the back seat floor, perfectly still, his head resting between Mia and Lucas's feet. Not sleeping, just watching. Every passing streetlight flashed across his golden eyes, yet he never blinked. When they reached the house, the dog stepped out slowly, scanning the driveway, the porch, the windows, almost like he was assessing the place. Emily unlocked the door, and he slipped inside without a sound. Lucas set down a bowl of leftover chicken. "Here, buddy, you must be starving." The dog didn't even look at it. Instead, he walked to the center of the living room and stood there, motionless, like a statue. His chest rose and fell gently, but nothing else moved. Mia frowned. "Does he not like food?" Emily kneeled beside him. "Maybe he's scared." But the dog wasn't trembling. He wasn't nervous. He looked alert. Mark checked his phone. "I'll call the shelter tomorrow. Maybe someone's looking for him." Before anyone could answer, the lights flickered. Once, twice, then went back to normal. Lucas blinked. "What was that?" Emily shook her head. "Old wiring." But the dog reacted, ears twitching, eyes narrowing at the hallway leading to the darkened rooms, as if he sensed something the family couldn't. That night, they prepared a blanket for him in the hallway, but he didn't lay down. Not once. Hours passed. Emily woke around midnight to get water and froze halfway down the stairs. The dog was still standing in the same spot, straight, rigid, his head turned toward the children's bedrooms. His eyes glowed faintly in the dark, fixed on the hallway. "Hey," she whispered, "you should rest." He didn't move. He didn't even acknowledge her. Emily swallowed hard and retreated upstairs. Around 3 a.m., Mia suddenly screamed. Mark bolted from bed, racing into her room. She sat upright, shaking. "Something scratched my door," she whispered. "I heard it, like it was trying to get in." Mark checked the hallway. The dog was standing just inches from Mia's door, silent, watching him, as if waiting for Mark to arrive. Mark's chest tightened. Did you scratch the door?" The dog slowly turned his head toward the staircase, away from the door, as though signaling something else entirely, something deeper, something unseen. Morning sunlight spilled gently through the curtains as Mia stepped into the hallway, still shaken from the night before. She froze when she saw him, the strange dog, sitting right outside her door, as if he had been guarding her all night. He lifted his head slowly, eyes softening the moment he saw her. Mia hesitated. Then she whispered, "Were you protecting me?" The dog blinked once, a slow, deliberate motion. For the first time, it didn't feel eerie. It felt like an answer. Mia sat on the floor beside him. "Mom said I should give you a name." She studied his dark, sleek body and sharp ears. "You look like a shadow. Can I call you that?" The dog lowered his head onto her lap, releasing a silent breath, as if accepting the name. Emily watched from the kitchen doorway, her eyebrows lifting in surprise. "Well, someone's made a friend." Shadow followed Mia everywhere that morning. If she walked to the kitchen, he padded silently behind her. If she went to the living room, he lay beside her feet like a silent guardian. If she laughed, his ears perked, his expression softening into something almost gentle. Lucas tried to play with him, too, tossing a ball across the room, but Shadow didn't chase it. He barely noticed it. His attention was locked on Mia, as though she was the only person in the world he trusted. When Mark crouched down to pet him, Shadow stepped back, not aggressive, just cautious. But when Mia reached out her hand, he moved forward instantly, resting his head against her palm. Emily whispered to Mark, "He's attached to her." Mark nodded slowly. Maybe he thinks she needs him. Later that afternoon, Mia curled up on the couch with a blanket. Shadow climbed up beside her, carefully, then circled once and lay down with his head across her legs. A low, soft sound rumbled from his chest. Not a growl, not a whine, something like a promise. Emily felt a chill, not of fear, but of realization. Shadow hadn't just bonded with Mia. He had chosen her. Over the next 2 days, the house began to feel different. At first it was little things, a cupboard left open, footsteps upstairs when everyone was in the living room, the thermostat changing on its own. Emily brushed it off as stress, But Mark felt something tightening in his chest every time Shadow stiffened and stared into empty corners. It was always the corners. Shadow's eyes would track something no one else could see. His body would lock, muscles coiled, ears slanted sharply forward. Sometimes he'd growl, low and rumbling, though his gaze never shifted from whatever invisible thing held his attention. On the third night, around 11 p.m., the family heard the basement door slam. Emily gasped. "Did you lock it?" Mark nodded. "Yes, and it doesn't swing on its own." Shadow bolted toward the sound before anyone could react. His claws scraped against the floor as he skidded to the basement door, pressing his body against it, snarling at the crack beneath it. Lucas clung to Emily's arm. "Why is he doing that?" But Shadow wasn't acting wild. His movements were precise, almost calculated, like he was tracking something dangerous. Mark grabbed a flashlight. "I'm going down." Emily grabbed his wrist. "Don't! Please, call someone." Shadow suddenly stopped growling. He stepped back and sat, perfectly still, his head tilted slightly, eyes locked on Mark, as though telling him, "Not now, not safe. Don't go." Mark shivered. "Okay, maybe we wait." That night, no one slept well. At 3:12 a.m., Mia screamed again. Mark and Emily sprinted to her room. Mia cried, pointing to her closet. "Something was moving. I saw the door open." The closet door was ajar. Shadow stood in front of it, body tense, teeth slightly bared. Not toward Mia, but toward something inside the dark, cramped space. Mark opened the closet, heart pounding. Nothing, just clothes, toys, and shadows dripping down the walls. Shadow didn't relax. He stayed planted in front of the closet for nearly 10 minutes, watching the darkness like it was alive. By morning, the entire family felt uneasy. Emily pulled Mark aside at breakfast. "I don't know what's happening, but Shadow senses something we can't." Mark exhaled slowly. "We need answers." Shadow sat beside Mia, eyes glowing in the morning light, calm for the moment, but alert, always alert. Something wasn't right in the house, and Shadow knew it long before they did. On Saturday morning, the Ramirez family tried to return to normal life. Emily brewed coffee, Mark fixed a loose kitchen drawer, and the kids played quietly on the living room rug. Shadow lay beside Mia, his head resting across her feet like always. At around 11 a.m., their elderly neighbor, Mr. Alden, stopped by with a bag of lemons from his garden. He was a retired wildlife rehabilitator, someone who had spent his whole life around animals. Emily opened the door with a tired smile. "Good morning, Mr. Alden." "Morning," he said warmly. "Thought you could use some fresh lemons." Before Emily could thank him, Shadow appeared behind her, moving silently as he always did. The moment Mr. Alden saw the dog, his smile vanished. His entire body stiffened. The bag slipped from his hands, lemons rolling across the porch. He took a step back. Where did you get that animal?" Emily blinked. We found him near the beach. Why?" Mr. Alden didn't move. His eyes were locked onto Shadow, wide and alert, the way someone looks at a snake rather than a dog. "That," he whispered, "is not a stray." Mark came to the door. "Is something wrong?" Mr. Alden exhaled shakily. "You need to be careful." "Very careful." Shadow stepped forward slightly, not aggressively but protectively, placing himself between Mia and the doorway. Mr. Alden swallowed hard. "Does he stare into corners? Stand still for long periods?" Emily's heart dropped. "Yes." "Does he eat normally? Bark? Sleep?" Emily shook her head slowly. "No." A look of dread washed over the old man's face. "You need to get him checked. Immediately. Before—" He stopped himself, glancing at the children. Before what? Mark pressed. Mr. Alden forced a stiff smile. Just trust me. Take him to a professional. Then he stepped back, never turning his back on Shadow, never blinking, never lowering his guard. I have to go, he muttered, nearly tripping on the steps as he retreated. The moment he disappeared down the sidewalk, Emily closed the door, her hands trembling. Mia hugged Shadow tightly. He didn't mean it, she whispered into his neck. But the truth was sinking in. Someone finally recognized what Shadow really was, and they were afraid. By Monday morning, the tension in the house had reached its peak. Doors kept opening on their own. The Wi-Fi crashed every few hours. Shadow would suddenly stiffen, staring at empty hallways with a growl so deep it made the walls vibrate. Even Mark, always rational, couldn't explain what was happening. We're taking him to the vet today, he said firmly. No more waiting. Mia clung to Shadow's neck. He's not bad. He's just scared. Emily knelt beside her daughter. Sweetheart, we're not giving him away. We just need to make sure he's okay. Shadow didn't resist when Mark clipped the leash on him, but as they walked to the car, he paused at the doorway, looking back into the house as if he didn't want to leave something behind, or didn't want something to follow them. The vet clinic was bright, clean, and filled with the usual sounds of whining puppies and ringing phones, but the moment Shadow stepped inside, the room fell strangely quiet. Even the other animals shrank back in their crates. The receptionist forced a smile. Name of your pet? Mark opened his mouth, but the woman's eyes widened as she got her first good look at Shadow. Oh, my! Before Mark could ask what that meant, Dr. Howard, one of the clinic's senior veterinarians, stepped out from the back. Next, he called. When Shadow walked toward him, the vet froze mid-step. His jaw clenched, his eyes narrowed. His hand tightened around the clipboard. Bring him to exam room 3, he said, voice unusually stiff. In the exam room, Dr. Howard approached carefully, not taking his eyes off Shadow for even a second. He examined his skin, bones, eyes, and teeth with slow, measured movements. Where did you find him? He finally asked, voice low. Mark explained everything. The beach, his behavior, the strange incidents, the neighbor's reaction. The vet's face grew paler with every detail. Dr. Howard set down his stethoscope. I'll need to run a few tests. Give me a moment. He stepped out of the room, but he didn't head to the lab. Emily saw him through the small window in the door, walking straight to the front desk, whispering urgently to the receptionist. Then she watched him pick up the phone. His expression changed. Sharp, serious, fearful. He wasn't talking to a veterinary lab. He was talking to the police. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She grabbed Mark's wrist. Mark! Something's wrong! Shadow lifted his head suddenly, ears twitching, eyes locked on the door as if he already knew. The first truth about him was finally about to surface, and it wasn't good. Emily's pulse thundered in her ears as she watched Dr. Howard whisper urgently into the phone. His eyes flicked toward the exam room window, then away quickly, like he didn't want Shadow to know he was calling someone. Mark's jaw tightened. Why is he calling the police? He said he was doing tests. Emily shook her head. He's scared, Mark. He's really scared. Inside the room, Shadow sat calmly beside Mia. Too calmly. His posture was alert, ears perked, gaze fixed on the hallway, like he already sensed what was coming. 5 minutes later, the door opened. It wasn't the vet. 2 uniformed police officers stepped inside. Mr. and Mrs. Ramirez? Mark nodded warily. The taller officer's eyes landed on Shadow. He froze, just like the neighbor, just like the receptionist, just like the vet. "Is this the animal?" he asked quietly. Emily felt the hair rise on her arms. "Why are you asking that? What's going on?" The second officer pulled out a small flashlight, but instead of shining it into Shadow's eyes, he used it to examine the pattern of the dog's skin, its ridges, shapes, and markings. Shadow didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't show fear. He only shifted slightly closer to Mia, positioning himself between her and the officers. Mark stepped forward. "Is he dangerous?" The taller officer shook his head slowly. "Dangerous? No. Highly trained? Yes." "What does that mean?" Emily demanded. Before the officer could respond, Shadow suddenly stood up, body going rigid. His ears snapped toward the hallway. A low growl rumbled through his chest, dark, guttural, unlike anything they had heard before. The officers exchanged a sharp look. "What is he hearing?" Emily whispered. The shorter officer spoke carefully. "Dogs like him. They're trained to detect specific threats, sometimes things humans can't smell or hear." Emily's breath caught. "So he's sensing something right now?" "Maybe," the officer replied, "but we're here because his breed is associated with—" But he didn't finish, because in that instant the lights flickered again. Shadow lunged toward the door with explosive force. So fast he knocked over a metal stool, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Mia screamed and grabbed Mark's arm. Shadow stood at the doorway, muscles trembling, teeth bare, but not toward the officers, toward the hallway, as if someone or something was coming. The police stepped back, suddenly more alert. "This just got worse," the taller officer muttered. Shadow's growl vibrated through the clinic walls. His eyes locked on the hallway with such intensity that even the police officers instinctively reached for their holsters. But nothing appeared, just empty corridors and the hum of fluorescent lights. The taller officer cleared his throat. "All right, you deserve answers." He looked at Dr. Howard, who had just slipped into the room, pale and trembling. "Tell them," the officer said. Dr. Howard swallowed. "This isn't a normal dog." Emily instinctively pulled Mia closer. "What do you mean?" Shadow slowly stopped growling but stayed positioned in front of the family. He watched the officers carefully, like he knew exactly what they were about to reveal. The vet exhaled shakily. His bone structure, his muscle density, even the arrangement of his dermal plates, this animal isn't bred like ordinary dogs. Mark frowned. "Dermal plates?" The officer nodded. "He's not domesticated. He's a Zoloitz Kintley, a rare ancient breed, incredibly intelligent, practically silent, loyal to one human only." His eyes shifted to Mia. "And clearly, he chose her," Emily whispered. "So he's just a rare dog? Why call the police?" Dr. Howard's expression tightened. "Because this breed is being used by a criminal organization that smuggles protected animals across the border. They train them to guard, track, and retrieve contraband. They're worth thousands." Emily felt her stomach drop. "So you think Shadow belonged to smugglers?" "We're certain," the officer replied. "There've been sightings. A group lost one of their trained dogs 2 weeks ago near the coastline, but we didn't know where he ended up." Mark shook his head. No, that can't be. He's gentle. He protects Mia." "That's exactly the problem," the officer said quietly. "They train these animals to imprint on a single child. It makes them bond more intensely. It makes them fiercely protective." Mia tightened her arms around Shadow's neck, tears in her eyes. "He's not bad. They treated him bad, but he's good." Shadow leaned into her, letting out a soft, low whine, almost human-like. The vet stepped forward. "There's more." Emily braced herself. "More?" Dr. Howard pointed to a faint scar near Shadow's neck. "This is from a tracking tag. Someone removed it recently. Probably Shadow himself. These dogs are smart enough to chew them out." Mark's voice cracked. "So he escaped?" "Exactly." The officer nodded. "And if he escaped, then someone might be looking for him." The lights flickered gently overhead. Shadow lifted his head, ears rising, body stiffening again. He heard something. Someone. Coming. And this time the officers understood the danger. Shadow's ears snapped toward the back exit of the clinic, sharper, faster, more alert than before. The officers froze. Mark instinctively stepped in front of Emily and the kids. "What is it?" he whispered. Shadow answered first. He lunged toward the metal door with explosive force, claws scraping across the tiles as a deep, savage snarl tore from his throat. One, unlike anything the family had ever heard. The taller officer drew his weapon. "Everyone stay behind me." Emily clutched Mia and Lucas tightly as Shadow positioned himself between them and the door. His entire body shook, not with fear, but with readiness, like he'd been waiting for this moment. Then, a sharp clang. Something hit the back exit from the outside. The shorter officer radioed, "Unit 14 requesting immediate backup, possible intruders." Another clang echoed, this time louder. Shadow growled so fiercely the lights rattled in their fixtures. Dr. Howard backed away, voice trembling. "Oh, God, they're here for him." Suddenly, the metal door buckled inward, just an inch, but enough to send terror flooding through the room. The officers raised their weapons. "Get down!" one shouted, and then everything happened at once. The door cracked open a few inches. A gloved hand shoved through, trying to pry it wider. Shadow launched himself forward, slamming into the door with thunderous force. His snarl exploded into the hallway like a warning siren. The intruders jerked back. The taller officer used the moment to rush the door and slam it shut again, locking the bolt. "They're armed," he hissed. "I saw a weapon." Shadow didn't move from the door. He stood planted, chest heaving, teeth bared, protecting the family with every ounce of strength he had. Another crash came, but this time muffled, further away. They were retreating. Backup sirens wailed in the distance. The intruders knew they had seconds left. Running footsteps echoed outside, then disappeared. The clinic fell silent except for Shadow's ragged breaths. The officers exchanged relieved glances. You don't understand," the taller officer said, staring at Shadow with newfound awe. "He didn't just protect you." He looked at Mark. "He fought off a trained recovery team." Emily's voice broke. "Recovery? You mean they were coming to steal him back?" The officer nodded slowly. "And he chose to fight for you instead." Shadow finally relaxed, turning to Mia. He nudged her hand softly. He had protected her, protected all of them, at any cost. 2 hours later, the clinic parking lot was filled with police cars, flashing lights reflecting off windows and asphalt. Officers moved in and out of the building, gathering statements, checking security footage, and reviewing the damage to the back door. But Shadow stayed beside Mia the entire time, calm now, but alert, as if waiting for permission to breathe again. Finally, the lead officer approached the family with a softened expression. "We're done with questioning. You can take him home now." Emily blinked. "Home? After everything?" The officer nodded. "I spoke with Animal Control and Federal Wildlife Services. Given what happened here," he glanced at the dented steel door, "he clearly sees you as his family." Mark frowned. "But legally," the officer raised a hand. "Legally, he's an unclaimed animal who protected civilians from armed criminals." There are no ownership records left in the system. Whoever trained him, they lost their claim the day they abandoned him." Mia's face lit up with relief. She threw her arms around Shadow's neck, burying her face in his warm skin. "He gets to stay?" Shadow leaned into her so gently it almost broke Emily's heart. "Yes," the officer said, smiling. "He stays." As they stepped outside, the morning sun was rising, casting golden light across the lot. Shadow stopped at the edge of the sidewalk and lifted his head, sniffing the air. For a moment, Mark wondered if he was searching for danger. But then the dog turned around and pressed his forehead against Mark's leg, a sign of trust, a sign of belonging. Emily let out a shaky breath. "I'm glad we found him." Mark nodded. "I think he found us." When they reached the car, Shadow didn't wait for permission. He jumped inside and curled up beside Mia, placing his head gently across her lap. She stroked the smooth skin along his back as if comforting him, but Mark suspected it was the other way around. On the drive home, the family remained quiet, each lost in thought. Shadow watched the road through half-closed eyes, finally allowing himself to relax. As the house came into view, Shadow sat up straighter. Not fearful, not tense. Just home. Mia whispered, "Welcome back, Shadow." And for the first time since they met him, he wagged his tail. A small, hesitant wag. A new beginning.